Water carriers like Jesse D. Lopez. You have to be honest to be a water carrier. People are counting on you with their lives. Back when we still had glaciers on the earth, nobody even had to think about water. But now that the earth has settled into a new era, us terrestrials, as we're called, must provide for ourselves like the tribes of old. I hear how people used to think they had the power to change the weather. In the end, the sun changed into a new cycle. The magnetic polarity of the earth shifted, and the new weather systems wiped out entire civilizations that couldn't survive at the end of the Quaternary Ice Age. I think of how people took for granted that we used to live in an ice age, where polar caps routinely covered the earth. According to ancient studies like core ice samples, for most of the Earth's life, the normal that the Earth is familiar with consists of the way it is now, an overabundance of natural gases in the atmosphere. New life evolving to adapt to the dry, new, sun-baked environment under a weakened magnetosphere. The Earth has seen times like this before. The only thing new here is us. I remember being taught that the last time the poles flipped, there was a mass extinction event on Earth. Now that it has flipped again, we have survived the mass extinction of our era. The birds, whales, and insects that relied on geomagnetic poles were the first to go extinct. Then the dominoes fell, and half the world's animals had died off. Then people, in their lack of foresight, continued to fish, hunt, and eat every of the Earth's civilizations out of existence, leaving the rest of us to starve for more resources in their wake. As a water carrier, you are always reminded that you carry the guilt of the world on your shoulders. Since men are needed to protect the water carriers, the task of carrying water falls onto the ladies of the lands like me, much like the water carriers of ancient Rome. The aching backs and bruised shoulders are what we deserve for taking our lives for granted all this time, and for leaving the earth in trash-filled shambles after the final wars. The rusted relics of the final wars are here to remind us of what happens to humanity when we are pushed to the brink. The final wars destroyed many of the world's surviving civilizations and culminated in a new world order that used its power to end the final wars and began moving humanity into off-world colonies on the moon and Mars. I heard the stories as a child about the last of the best people on Earth as they colonized their off-world paradises. For one generation with all their world's elite lined up to join the build. They lasted 49 years, with news of corruption and infighting, never far out of the normal news cycles. And then the colony on Mars collapsed, and the refugees came back. My mother told me of the horror story that became legendary to all people on Earth. According to the stories, the moon colonies were destroyed by terrorist activities, leaving refugees to flee back to Earth. In this way, Earth has lost almost all of its best and brightest scientists, and many technologies became archaic to a less knowledgeable civilization of service workers, of collapsed industries that cater to off-world industrialization. When I was schooled with the other boys and girls, we learned of our town's founding, which came at the end of the last age. We learned with the collapse of the colonies came the collapse of society on Earth, with global currency as a catalyst. Then the surviving economies, splintered and divided into tribes, concentrated in places with abundant natural resources, such as lakes and riversides. During these times, laws against outsiders became normalized, and many wilders, people without tribes, starved without ease of access to the same resources as townfolk, who banded together to protect vast areas of resources like us. A council of elders choose candidates from tribal leaders to lead the tribe, and the people vote for their tribal leaders, who are usually of some relation to townfolk. This is life as I knew it, and for me, the idea of large cities full of millions of people is terrifying. But I suppose people can do almost anything they put their minds to, except conserve the environment. I grew up knowing hunger and thirst as the worst things in life, while fear of strangers is the backdrop of all other fears. It is taught to children to fear others, whomever they may be. Scenarios where strangers poison the drinking water and murder entire villages like yours, or popular themes in children's horror stories, stepping back to the terrorist on the moon. I see the images of women like me carved onto the walls of City Hall, carrying water pots on wooden yotes. I see these depictions of water carriers in many places, and it reminds me of how vital my banal task is to our people. Suddenly the aches and pains of my labors is depreciated by the timelessness of our tradition that I'm proud to be part of. Work ends when the water is collected at the desalination plant in town. At the end of the day, me and my sisters wash our clothes together in the washing hole, where clothes are tossed around us as freely as jokes and laughter. I used to be shy around the other girls, but being a water carrier makes a woman like me solidly formed and tightly built. I'm not ashamed to play in the water with everyone else. After a hard day of carrying the water, who wouldn't want to splash around under the showers?